Eva. Is that correct? Is that
Thank
the
you.
correct pronunciation?
Yeah,
Eva or Eva?
in Dutch you would say Eva. In
Eva.
Dutch you would say Eva, but in English I
Okay.
guess it's Eva. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to try to say Eva. All right. Uh Glad you could make it. Uh I'm very glad to have you here. Um can you maybe introduce yourself and tell everybody listening and watching who you are and what you're doing and why we are talking even?
Well, I'm Eva. I'm from the YouTube channel Virtue of Life Studio, and I mostly post videos around the topic of intentional slow living, but I've recently also started posting a little bit more about autism. Yeah, I guess that's also why we are here today to talk about that. So,
Yeah, that's true. Um Maybe yeah, I asked you, but probably I can tell more about why we are talking since I asked you to talk. Um yeah, so I don't know if you're familiar with my content, if you've checked out any of the stuff I've any of the previous conversations I've had.
yeah, I,
Have you?
yeah, I
Yeah.
have checked out some. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, I started out doing a series of streams on incels, and at some point, it turned out that autism was a very high predictor in the scientific literature. That was basically the
Hmm.
only meaningful predictor that was found. For all the other ones, you could basically say it's chicken and the egg situation, where you're not really sure which one is causing which of course doesn't reduce inceldom to autism. It's just if you're autistic as a male, it's a very high likelihood that you will have a lot of problems with
Yeah,
finding a romantic partner. That was
there's
there's
correlation there.
Yeah, there is a big correlation there, and so that made me so curious about the topic, and I thought I knew. I thought I had a rudimentary understanding of autism before,
Hmm.
but I found out that I don't have it at all, and that yeah, I don't know shit about it basically.
I don't
And
think you're the only one.
yeah, I think that's true, and that's what I thought as well. I thought that I'm not the only one, so I decided to. I don't know where this is going to take me, but I would like to do at least yeah enough streams to get a better understanding and talk to people that are adjacent to the topic. And yeah, I was looking for content creators that are identifying as autistic or having diagnosed as autistic. And yeah, I stumbled upon your small series. And yeah, that's basically what we were talking. You, what's the what? So just so people get an understanding of what type of content it is you're doing. You're not only doing autism content. You're
No,
what
no, I'm
else? What
mostly
else are you doing?
like lifestyle based, I guess you could say. Mostly focused on intentional and slow living.
Mm-hmm.
So really, how to bring intention into your daily life, how to slow it down to really enjoy the small moments, basically the little
Mm-hmm.
things in life. So that's mostly what I focus on. And yeah, at some point I thought maybe it would be helpful if I would start sharing a little bit about my experience with autism. So I kind of started doing that
Mm-hmm.
and started that series on my channel.
One reason why you were hesitant in the past uh, to share this diagnosis basically was that you were scared of being treated differently. Uh, that's what
Yeah,
you said in one of your videos, and
yeah.
that has put me in a big dilemma basically for this conversation because the thing is I don't know if I'm known for in my very very small community. I'm known for being um sorry, I think the signal broke off a little bit there. Did
Yeah,
you
it froze a little bit, but we're
Okay.
back, I think.
Yeah, we're back. Yeah, I'm known for being quite pedantic and for not letting my guests finish sometimes, and for nailing them down and asking them the same question all over again, over and over again, from steering the conversation in a pretty harsh way. And I feel like that's also my job. Like that's what I have to do. That's the service that
Hmm.
I'm providing, basically. Um, yeah, but then if the topic is autism, and I'm reading that monologuing and sometimes misunderstanding the question
Yeah.
and all of that is basically part of the thing that I'm talking about, that puts me
Yeah.
in a very I mean, it would be stupid to invite somebody with that, with these symptoms or with these traits, and then to expect them to not do that. That would be kind of stupid. So yeah, that puts me in a little bit of a dilemma, and at the same time, I don't want to treat you differently. So what should we do, Eva? Please save me from this dilemma.
I'd say just do your normal thing, and I'll let you know if something really goes wrong. But I expect it should be okay.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think I can do anything else anyways. So I just want to get your pro forma consent. But yeah, okay. So, but what it is it in general? Maybe we can broaden this question up a little bit. In general, with these, with I mean, I haven't even asked you. There is a lot of autistic people that don't even have that many social problems
Hmm.
or communication problems. Do you have I think I feel like you've said that you have some communication problems, right?
Yeah, I would say if you have the official diagnosis, you definitely do have some sort of communication issues, because it's kind of a big part of actually being able to get that diagnosis. So if you don't have any issues, you wouldn't get the diagnosis of autism.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's mostly that I tend to take things really, really seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't always catch sarcasm or anything like that. I
Mm-hmm.
don't always get that. And also, like directly speaking to someone, it can be a little bit difficult for me to keep the eye contact going. It just feels a little bit too intimate, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like someone staring right into your soul. So for me, it's mostly that, and it's just kind of draining to keep, especially small talk, going. If it's not something that I'm interested in,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, that's mostly where it comes in for me.
Uh, Is there how would we be able to differentiate, or is there even a big difference between just plain social anxiety that
Hmm.
that people that are not autistic would feel, or would you say that it's about the same?
Um, yeah, I think there is a difference. I do think they kind of play like hands in hands, I guess, with
Mm-hmm.
autism, because if your social skills are not as strong, then automatically you're likely to experience social anxiety, I guess. But they're not exactly the same, because with autism, you actually like your brain just works in a slightly different way, which means that the social skills are usually, I'm not going to say always, but usually not as developed as with someone that is not autistic.
Mm-hmm.
So it does go kind of hand in hand, but it's not completely the same. I'm not sure if I'm really making sense right now, but
Sure. No.
that's as
No.
best as I can explain it.
Yeah. Of course. And what is it that for you is the most comfortable in that situation? For example, would you prefer someone to just not use sarcasm in a conversation with you, or would you prefer them to maybe use it and then explain it, uh, or maybe
um,
help you train to detect it, or what would
Yeah,
be the ideal?
I think it's mostly just getting used to it. I mean, for some people, if I know them well, I usually will get that they're when they are using sarcasm.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't really know a person, that is where things can get a little bit more difficult for me, because I don't really detect the signs almost of them
Mm-hmm.
using it. So I'd say just go on like you usually talk, and
Mm-hmm.
then if I you probably notice soon enough if I'm taking something seriously
Yeah.
that I should not be taking seriously. So if that's the case, just let me know, and hey, sign like it's happening basically.
One where I thought a lot about was monologuing,
Hmm.
and I thought, like, I think it's pretty hurtful situation when you find out that you have just monologued, and basically the implication of monologuing is that the other person is not that interested in what you're saying, that you are talking too
Hmm.
long. And it's a pretty hurt. I mean, it happens to neurotypical people as well all the time,
Yeah, of
right?
course.
And just it's a pretty hurtful and bad feeling for most people. So how do you navigate these situations? What would you like in that situation, for example? Wouldn't you want the other person to prevent that, or are you like, let me talk, man? Just
I guess it depends on the situation. If I just really feel like word vomiting and just doing my thing, then it's just let me talk and you can ignore me basically. But if I do want like a two-way communication, then it's kind of nice if someone lets me know, hey, I lost track. Please get me back on track because I don't follow this anymore. Or this is going way too deep for me. So it really depends on the situation in that case.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like all of the things that, I mean, almost every situation that is being described by autistic people is something
Hmm.
that neurotypical people have as well,
Yeah.
just not in that frequency, I guess.
Yeah.
And I feel like the learning curve is higher, right? Is that a big issue that you that the training is?
I'd say just like social training, if you would,
Mhm,
it takes a little bit more from someone that is autistic, um, because like I already touched on this, but the brain works a little bit differently. So for most autistic people, you first start developing the part of your brain that is more like the analytic part. So yeah, I'm not sure how to say it, but the analytic part in for most neurotypicals, the first thing that you start really developing is the social skills. So
mhm,
making contact and keeping that contact going. So basically, that's flipped with autism, and because we basically start to really develop the social part of our brain a little bit later,
mhm,
you could say that in the end it's less developed, I guess, than for a neurotypical, which is also why we tend to go more into like those special interests, because that analytical part of our brain is more developed than for most neurotypicals it would be, I guess. So I think it's mostly there, and now I lost what your question was.
yeah, the question was, no, you totally answered the question. The question was if the challenges are the same, but the training just
Yeah,
takes longer for
yeah.
autistic people. And yeah, that kind of, yeah, that makes sense. And so if you say the development is delayed, basically, is it delayed forever, or can it be? Uh, I mean, it's obviously different from individual to individual, but
Yeah.
would you say that the development or nurture, let's say like that, it's
Hmm.
is can be so significant that it can be basically bridged this gap?
I wouldn't say it's quite bridged because in the end, um, yeah, I'm not sure how to say this.
Because then you would be like, you would have like superpowers. It would just be
Yeah,
really strong development in analytical part
yeah,
and also the social part, which would be.
yeah. So I don't think, for most people, at least with autism, you're going to quite bridge the gap there. That's mostly where the masking comes in. So trying to almost fit in, basically, almost play the role of
Mhm,
what is expected of you in conversation, and that's where it can be kind of draining to keep the conversation or communication in any way like going.
mhm,
So I don't think you're quite ever going to get where most neurotypicals would be with their social skills,
mhm.
but you can get close for like for what the other person would notice. I'd say that because like inside, it's going to just take more energy than for someone that is neurotypical because you are constantly thinking about it. Whereas most other people's, they just have the conversation. Maybe they'll think a little bit about it afterwards, but you are constantly thinking about it while you are going and then also trying to keep track of the conversation.
Yeah.
So it just takes a little bit more energy.
Mhm. We've already touched a little bit on on a few of the traits that you experience, but what are other traits that you experience? I mean, I've heard a few of them, but maybe since you're now, maybe somebody hasn't watched your videos on it, you can
um,
tell us a little bit more.
yeah, for me, the most like the trait that I struggle with the most, I guess, is that social contacts are so draining, which we already touched on.
Hmm.
Something else that can be difficult is that I'm pretty sensitive to different stimuli, like from outside. So
Mm-hmm.
sounds can have kind of a big impact, as well as smell. Scent has a really big impact, which might also be what actually led me to become an aromatherapist. So it's also kind of good in that way, but it can also be kind of draining sometimes, because I do tend to almost yeah, notice them more. I guess they're a little bit stronger for me than for a lot of other people. So I think it's mostly that, just the context that yeah, training, social events and situations, combined with the oversensitivity for stimuli. I think that's mostly what is difficult for me. And that combination, especially if you work with like a bigger group of people, because then it's where it really all comes together, because you have to be social. You need to be able to like act normal, basically, whatever that might be. Like you need to fit in that mold of what is socially acceptable, and then also while doing that, you deal with all of the stimuli that come, yeah, basically onto you, from like the scents from different people, the scents from maybe foods or drinks or something that's going on, the sounds, even light sometimes can be kind of harsh. So you're dealing with a lot of stimuli, both from within, from trying to fit into that mold, as well as from outside. So I think that's what's most difficult for me. And I think that's actually the case for a lot of people with autism, but that's definitely where I struggle with the most.
Are those what percentage of what percentage is that of the whole diagnosis criteria? That I mean, you have been diagnosed,
Yeah.
and basically, what are they looking for? Just this, or what more are they looking for? What might be other?
They are, yeah, they are definitely looking for the social communication like difficulties. That's a must basically in the diagnosis. And then they have, I think, a list of several different things that you could experience while autistic, and then you need to touch on like a couple of those. I'm not sure how many of, or exactly which parts are there to that, but
Mhm.
you need to, yeah, you need to basically fit into a mold of different ones of those. So definitely the social issues basically, and
That's a
then
must.
also a few of the, yeah,
That's
it's
a
a
must
must. Yeah,
because
that's the must.
I have now heard. I mean, I've watched a lot of channels on autism in the last
Hmm.
weeks and months, but and I've basically heard complaints about
Yeah.
complaints that people are that this is a must, basically. What do
Yeah.
you think about that? Do you think it's makes sense that this is a must, or do you think that
Um,
it's
well, it's kind of double. In one way, I feel like if you want to diagnose something, inherently with the word diagnosis, there is something that is not as normal, basically. So there needs to be a, it's called a disorder. I mean, I'm not completely, it doesn't quite feel right that it's called a disorder. It's just the brain that
yeah?
works a little bit differently. But in order to diagnose something as a disorder, you need to have something that is wrong with someone. I don't think it's something that is wrong with me, but it is different from what is seen as normal. So yeah, I it's kind of double, I guess, in that way.
Hmm. I guess the people that are complaining about that being criteria also disagree with it being a
Hmm.
disorder. Uh,
Yeah.
h- how do you feel? How I mean, how do you feel about that? I mean, you've already also there. You seem a little torn. You seem not
Yeah.
so sure if it is or if it isn't.
um, I don't think. Yeah, I don't feel like it's a disorder as in how the word is usually seen. So something is wrong with something, with someone. That's usually what disorder means. But it is disorder as in, if you look at it as order is just what is normal, the mold. It's not that.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of fit outside of that normal mold. So in that case, if you would see it, yeah, explain disorder in that way, just not what is expected, I guess, of a person, in that case, it does kind of fit, but not in the way that usually the word disorder is meant.
Mm-hmm. but where do you fit suffering in there? I
Well,
mean,
suffering is just how much you make it.
what do you mean? I don't.
Suffering is really personal. Like, if I don't see something as suffering, like, suffering is just, I'm going to explain this.
Take your time.
um, like, suffering is only there at the moment that you decide that it's something that is not what you like want or feel like. I'm not really sure how to really explain this well. Um, there's like this term dukkha. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it, like in
No.
the meditation yoga
I
world,
mean,
basically.
I've
And
delved
that's
into
basic.
meditation, but not in that
Yeah,
sense, probably.
it's maybe a little bit deeper than that.
Yeah.
Dukkha is basically, you would translate it as suffering. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And basically anything could be suffering. If I really make a big deal of not being able to drink the drink that I really want to drink at that moment, that could be
Mm-hmm.
suffering. I could
Mm-hmm.
also just notice, okay, I don't have that drink right now. It's okay. I'll have that drink a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
So it really depends on how you stand in that yourself, I guess, and how much of a problem you are making out of it yourself.
Really?
I
That's,
guess it
I
is, yeah.
mean, I don't know. I feel like that's really hard for me to believe, because I mean, I see so many people that are like just plain out suffering from things that they can't control, that
Hmm.
it kind of, I don't know, that comes off kind of harsh to tell them,
I get that, yeah.
listen, I know you don't have any food to eat and no shelter, but it's your own happiness. You have to make it yourself. I mean, it's kind, and also similarly, I mean, I don't know. Have you watched the conversation I've had with Eros? My last conversation.
I think I only watched part of that.
Okay. I mean, we talked about suffering, and I don't feel like his suffering is a matter of perspective. I mean, the
Hmm.
difficulty in creating social bonds with people, and
Hmm.
in finding also romantic. I mean, for him it was not the case. He's not an incel, but I know that many people suffer from finding a romantic partner, and I feel like that's kind of a big deal if you're alone. Like loneliness, I think,
Yeah,
is
of
a
course.
really hard hard thing for people to deal with. I mean, the
I'm not saying
reason,
that something can be hard. I'm
yeah,
really not
sure.
saying that. Like with, I guess also with the whole thing of suffering, you would expect like the basic needs are kind of met before you can really, um, yeah, change your perspective on that. I guess
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's going to be really, really, really hard to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of makes sense. So I'm not saying that things can be hard,
Okay, so you're
but
basically
how
saying
much you suffer from something, you can kind of control that a little bit.
beyond
Like,
the necessary,
yeah,
yeah,
beyond like the
beyond
basic
like
needs
the
that
basic
need to be
needs.
met. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's where I'm getting at, basically, is like there is this, and we're going to get to the terminology about
Hmm.
categorizing different types of autistic people. uh, i- but there is people that are autistic that are not able to have this basic needs met, like,
Yeah,
and I don't know, that's also some suffering that we would agree. I mean, we could disagree that it doesn't come from, we could say that it doesn't come from autism. I don't know what you think about this. Maybe it comes
it
from
depends.
society. Maybe it's
Both.
just because society is not accommodating enough for autistic
Both.
people.
Yeah, I think it's both ways. I'm not sure
Hmm.
if you've seen the video that I did on the double empathy problem.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes right in there.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think we, like as autistic people, are often expected to fit, like as I already said, in the mold of what society accepts as being normal.
Hmm.
So we are often the ones that are expected to basically mask change yourself almost to fit in that mold, and that can be really hard. So it's also society needs to kind of accommodate that. They need to acknowledge that we are a little bit different, I guess, in that way. that would already make things a lot easier. But also we need to realize as autistic people that they don't see the world in the same way that we do. It kind of goes both ways, and it may sound a little bit harsh, I guess, to someone if you're really struggling. I definitely get that. That sounds really harsh, but it really does go both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like both parties need to understand that both parties see the world in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Would you think so? So I mean, I guess if, for example, I could imagine a society that would be
Mm-hmm.
perfectly accommodating for autistic people, where and there were no more autistic people suffering,
Mm-hmm.
then I would be completely convinced that autism is not a disorder.
Yeah, of course.
Then I would be like, yeah, then it's just society doing
Yeah,
that, and but I'm not sure if that would be the case. What do you
I don't
think?
think so. I
You,
don't
you
think
don't think that would be
it's
the
going to be
case?
the case that that's ever going to happen. I would love it if it
No,
always
no, no, no.
happened,
I mean,
but
I don't think that I'm not sure if a society that would be built around autistic people
mm-hmm.
would eradicate every suffering that comes from being autistic.
No, of
It
course
wouldn't,
not.
right?
No, I don't think so
Okay.
either.
So, but wouldn't that be an argument in favor of uh, categorizing certain types of autism or certain and we have to talk about that as well. How do we call that? I know that you have your opinions about that as well. So, but at least after a certain threshold, wouldn't we
Mm-hmm.
have to call it a disorder to a certain extent to just encompass the suffering that is not societally caused directly?
Yeah, if there's no struggle, there's no disorder.
Exactly, right? Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. So
You can
let's
diagnose something that's not there.
true.
Like if there's no struggle, there's nothing to diagnose,
Mm-hmm,
and that's what the whole system is built upon. So.
mm-hmm. So let's maybe I feel like I have to dance around the
Mm-hmm.
it all the time because I'm trying not to use some certain terminologies, and I know that you have your opinions about it. Let's talk about the way that people characterize autistic people. There is this term
Mm-hmm.
high functioning, low functioning, and I feel like there is a few more of similar types of categories. uh let's talk about it. What is the what do you think about these categorizations? Should we just stop categorizing at all, or are these just the wrong categories? What do you think?
Yeah, I guess from like the viewpoint of like the society that we live in, it makes sense, but it's also kind of hurtful for the people that are being categorized that way, I guess.
Mm-hmm,
High functioning in this case really just means that you can function in society without that society notices that there is a problem there that you are struggling basically. So as long as you can focus on you can live your life basically. You can go to work. You can live your life without really society noticing there is something wrong. Then you are labeled high functioning.
mm-hmm,
Whereas if you need a lot of help, maybe you cannot even work at all, and that's where you would be labeled as low functioning. So I guess from society, like that viewpoint, it makes sense,
mm-hmm.
but it doesn't mean that someone that is high functioning doesn't really have the same or similar struggles that someone does that is lower functioning. It's just that they are able to mask it better.
Okay, I
So
get it. So the thing that bothers you is that it it just doesn't encapsulate the struggle that is behind this
yeah,
functioning, right?
yeah,
Because I feel like it is kind of dehumanizing to say like
yeah,
to say high functioning, low functioning, but I feel like it's not dehumanizing towards autistic people. It is like dehumanizing towards everyone because it's like the idea of okay, you have to function to be a
yeah.
like
To be a normal
yeah,
human being. Yeah.
yeah, like this idea of but on the other hand, yeah, I get why this. I mean, I wouldn't know how to if I would have to have a category for someone who is like autistic, maybe high masking, but
Yeah.
living overall an okay life, like being able to provide for themselves, being more or less healthy, having social relationships, having a romantic partner. If I would take this and compare it to someone that doesn't have that, I don't know. I feel like we need a category for that, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, it's a spectrum. Like
True.
it is autism spectrum disorder.
Mm-hmm.
That's already in the name. So you're automatically going to be somewhere on the spectrum of yeah, I guess it is higher functioning in this society
Mm-hmm.
or not functioning as well in this society. So it kind of makes sense, but it also kind of is a little bit harsh almost to put a label like that on a person. So it's really double, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm like, yeah,
Yeah, I don't like the label, but I'm not sure what else you would call it almost,
yeah. I mean,
which is kind
I
of annoying to admit. But
I'm also really not a big fan of calling like autism a spectrum. Like it's I don't know if I like that, because I feel like it there has to be a cutoff point that has to be
hmm
like at some point you're like, I mean, we all have autistic traits.
yeah,
Like everyone has autistic traits.
there are human traits.
Yeah,
They
they're
just are. Yeah,
just human
except in
traits.
autism, they are a little bit bigger almost, and you have more of those traits in one person,
Yeah,
which then makes
exactly.
it autism.
And we just put a threshold on it,
Yeah,
a more or less arbitrary threshold, and then
yeah.
we say, "Oh, okay, this is autism."
Now it's autism. Yeah,
And so that goes against this whole idea of the spectrum. I feel like, yeah, the whole world, everything is a spectrum. Like nothing's in nature, nothing is a category. We invent the category, but
yeah.
it doesn't make sense to call the category a spectrum. I feel like you either after a certain
Are
point,
or
yeah,
not.
you are or you
Yeah,
aren't. Like we are all in the spectrum of everything, right?
yeah,
So
true.
yeah.
But they used to be different diagnoses. They only somewhat recent. I'm not entirely sure when exactly they did that, but
Mm-hmm.
autism spectrum disorder used to be different diagnoses, and they put them together in autism spectrum disorder.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess in that sense, it kind of makes sense to make it a spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
because there is
yeah,
multiple axes on which it basically you could be
yeah,
uh autistic if you have a bunch of characteristics that go in the one direction and a
yeah,
bunch of that go in the other direction. But still, the circle is basically it's there is a
yeah,
circle drawn around the graph basically. What do you think about
yeah.
self-diagnosis?
I think it's fine. I think the only reason that you would want to be actually diagnosed would be either to get help if you need that, because sometimes in order to get that help, you need the diagnosis, which is a problem in and of itself, I guess. Or if you kind of want to make sure for yourself, like, hey, is this indeed what is going on for me? Which was the case for me. I'm someone that if I like before I actually got the diagnosis, I got it as an adult. I think I was 24 when I got the diagnosis a few years back. And for me, it was really almost to let me know like yes, what you are experiencing is like it's true. It's not like something you are making up. And almost I was feeling like if I'm calling myself autistic without having the diagnosis, then am I taking someone seriously that does actually have the diagnosis and is autistic? So that was kind of what was going on in my head before getting the diagnosis. So that's why I ended up going into that whole yeah, try to
Process.
get the yeah into the process to get the diagnosis. But if you're okay with just being self-diagnosed, I'm fine with that. Like absolutely okay.
Do you think the I mean the obvious harm that could come from that would be, I mean, if for every self-diagnosis doesn't have to be
hmm
autism, but would be false positives and false negatives, right?
Yeah,
So would you could you what would be the harm of a false false negative, for example? What would have been
false
what?
negative. So
Yeah,
you think you are not autistic while being autistic.
yeah. Basically, you do a self-diagnosis, and it turns out it says that you're not autistic, but actually you are. What would be a big like?
Mm, yeah, it depends. Like, do you want to get the diagnosis autism? Or would you like to not have the diagnosis autism? Like, if you don't
Wait,
really
but I
want a
feel like it
diagnosis in
shouldn't
the first
depend on
place.
that. I mean, I agree that it depends, but I feel like it shouldn't depend on your volition, right? It should be more
Okay,
like
so if you feel like you're autistic and then you go through a like test, I guess, self-diagnosis test,
yeah,
and it says you're not autistic.
yes,
You mean it like that, right?
yes.
Yeah, okay. um yeah, it can feel kind of invalidating, I guess. I think that's, and then you might keep searching on from like what is going on, what you are experiencing, like why are you experiencing what you are experiencing. I think that's the most harm in it. From what I can come up with right now,
Mm-hmm,
there's probably a whole lot of other things that can go
mm-hmm,
wrong there, but for right now, that's the only thing that I can really think of.
mm-hmm. I mean, I guess like there is no. I mean, the reason why I'm asking is because autism is so special in that sense that there is no treatment, quote unquote. There is no
Yeah,
like nothing basically happens after the diagnosis,
no,
except
no.
like I heard that there is some uh, negative consequences that can happen from it. I heard, I'm not sure, that there is even some countries that were uh, blocking people with autism into to basically enter the country. That's like that was quite
Oh,
horrific. Yeah, it's like one or two countries. I heard it on a
okay.
YouTube channel that was centered around autism, but it's like it's some minor, just one country or something like that. But
Hmm.
I mean, there is basically no positive, like like I feel like there is no positive thing that comes from a diagnosis except maybe the idea that you can't change a few things about yourself and you don't have to force yourself to change. You can just start accepting I mean, that's what you
Yeah.
said. I think I got this idea from you. So you've said um uh you've said that it makes you allowed you to work with your brain rather than against it.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Basically, what for me, like getting a diagnosis was, it's validating. Like
Mm-hmm.
you kind of, it feels like it's okay to be who you are almost, which is kind of weird that you actually need a diagnosis to
Yeah,
be to get there.
yeah,
I get that is weird. I
yeah, it is
definitely
weird.
do. Yeah, it is. It's very weird. It doesn't
Yeah,
make sense at all.
yeah,
But it can feel really validating, and also actually knowing what's going on can really help to, yeah, like I said, make work with your brain instead of against it.
yeah.
You start to learn that your brain works a little bit differently, um, and that that's not necessarily wrong. It's just a little bit different. Different is not necessarily wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's labeled as a disorder, which makes it sound wrong, but it's not inherently wrong.
I feel like even if it would be wrong, it should be okay. I mean, for
Yeah.
example, I can give you an example. Like I have a very extreme personality in that sense that I have to do everything in a really extreme way, and all my friends always make fun of me that I always have to exaggerate something. If I go
Hmm.
to the gym, I go every day, and if I eat something, I eat a lot of it and stuff
Yeah.
like that. I have a pretty addictive personality as well, which I don't know is also a trait in autism, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah, so but at some point, I mean, it has bothered me a lot during my 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 youth because it makes problems for you. I mean, it just obviously creates problems,
Yeah.
and it has bothered me a lot that I couldn't regulate so good as my other friends who were just like effortlessly just eating one chip out of a chips
Hmm.
bag and then leaving the rest, and I couldn't. I just had to finish it all, and at some point I just accepted myself like that and I just don't buy any chips. And then my friends don't get it
Smart.
and they're like, just why don't you just buy a bag of chips and just
Yeah.
don't eat the whole thing? And I'm like, I can't do it. That's just the way I am. So I feel like we could just do that. And I know it's not good that I'm like that, but I
Well, is
thought
it wrong?
about
You
that.
know that you work that way,
Yeah, I
so you
thought
can work
about
with that. So
yeah.
yeah.
I didn't want to work against my brain, so I don't buy any chips.
Yeah, smart.
And I feel like I don't need a diagnosis for that. You know, I don't need
No.
like I don't need a doctor to tell me that I have that. I already know that. Like,
Yeah.
and experience tells me that it's not that mutable. I mean, people tell me that it's probably good. It would be good if I change it, if I stop being like that. That there is,
Yeah, but how would you change that if that's part of you?
I don't know, like probably maybe there could be. I mean, I can imagine that I have something in my psychology that makes me like that.
Hmm.
And of course, one way to go about it would be to say, okay, go to a psychologist,
Yeah.
work on that, find out what it is, and fix it. But then I'm like, yeah, but this also makes me quite productive in other areas of my life. So I'm actually not that bothered by being like that, even though it's
Yeah.
obviously a negative thing. But it's like, and I feel like autism is a little bit similar. It's like, yeah, obviously
It's there.
it's there, and
That's
it's
all
not,
it
and
is.
it's
Yeah.
also hurting. It's not that
It
nice.
can be difficult. Yeah.
Yeah,
But there's also good things about it. So
yeah. So I
I get,
think, yeah.
yeah, I've had the question before. Like, if I would be able to take a pill and basically make the autism go away, if I would
Hmm.
take that, I'd say no.
Hmm.
Absolutely not.
Hmm. But can you understand other autistic people that would?
Yeah, I get it. Definitely. Like, if you really struggle with um, parts of autism, I get that you would want to take that pill if it existed.
Hmm.
I do. But for me, I say no. It's part of me. It's part of who I am. Like, it's not. Um, Autism is not who I am, but it is a part of me. It is the way that my brain works. It has always worked. I can't even really imagine what it would be like not being that way. It would change my entire personality if I do that.
Yeah, it is your brain, basically,
Yeah.
right? What would be the consequences? I mean, I feel like the consequences of a false positive would be kind of worse. I feel like, because then, because of this idea that we've touched upon, like this idea of, if you get diagnosed with something in that sense, then it means that it's immutable, that you can't change it,
Hmm.
and it basically takes that agency away from you, that you might be able to change this. It's like with me, like I still have the option somehow in my brain. I know that I could still work on that issue at some point,
Yeah.
and I don't have to be like that forever. I can just accept it, but I don't have to. And I feel like a diagnosis is like, on one hand, it's relieving that you don't have to work on it anymore, but it might be like, if it's a false positive, if it's not actually your brain,
Hmm.
if it's just your personality,
Yeah.
if it's maybe just trauma or something like that. It what do you think? Do you think that there is an, yeah, well, I basically answered my own question, but what do you think about it? I guess.
Yeah, I think I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it would be more harmful probably um, because you're not going to work on maybe the underlying problems that are there. At the same time, I guess if you're really after getting the false positive diving into it, you are also learning how to work with those things in a way. You're just not really going into like the root cause of it, I guess. But I do think it would be more harmful maybe than a false negative.
Hmm.
Yeah,
It's a pretty heated. I don't know. Do you are you into the whole autistic community on YouTube? Like, do you
barely.
watch a lot?
Barely.
Okay, okay, okay.
No,
Yeah.
I sometimes have like that I look into a specific part of it, but
Yeah.
I'm definitely not like all the way into the
Hmm.
whole community at all.
What about like I don't know, the academic discussions about it? Are you at all like, or do you just are like, I'm just living my life, don't leave me alone?
I'm mostly just living my life,
Yeah.
and I'll just kind of go into parts that are interesting to me, I guess. Also,
Hmm.
I'm in working as an aromatherapist. I do also work with autistic people.
Hmm.
It's where I wrote my thesis on it, I guess. So
Hmm.
it's how I graduated as an aromatherapist working with autism.
Hmm.
So if there's something in there in a client maybe that's triggering me, then that's probably what I will look into in terms of research or
Hmm.
YouTube, maybe other people's experiences. But I'm mostly just, yeah. living my life, seeing if there's something that's a problem for me, then I might dive into that. I may read books about other people's experience on it, but I'm not really into the whole like
I mean,
YouTube autism world, I guess.
the reason why I'm asking is because this is a really hot topic.
Hmm.
Self-diagnosis. It's a
Yeah,
really,
I get
really,
it.
really, really hot topic. For many reasons, and like one of the reasons are the ones that we touched upon. Others are just the problem that comes with it. Like people don't want to get officially diagnosed because of multiple reasons. For example, being stigmatized or having a criminal
Hmm.
record, or uh,
It's expensive
it's expensive.
in most
Exactly.
countries. Yeah.
Yes. So and then you have also the idea of gatekeeping, that it's like gatekeepy to not allow people to call themselves autistic, or to suggest that it's, I think already what I've said is already pretty, would infuriate a lot of people. I think
Probably. I'm sure
probably.
something I've said would infuriate people as well. There's always going to be people that are not going to like what you say,
Sure.
like
Sure.
whatever you say.
Why do you think this topic is so hot, like in within the, I didn't even know that this was the case. Like for outsiders this is like completely
It's a
completely
different
frozen.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think makes this, I mean, don't you think it's kind of toxic, and do you see any way we can resolve this conversation?
Yeah, it's absolutely toxic. Definitely. Um, yeah, I guess you can always find points for both viewpoints, I guess, in that way.
Hmm.
So it makes it kind of difficult to really say what would be the right thing to do. For me, I really don't mind people being self diagnosed. So, from, yeah, I really don't care if people have had an actual official diagnosis or not. If you are experiencing similar things to what I'm experiencing, what does it matter if you put a label on it or not? I really don't care about that, to be completely honest.
I feel like I'm just so into like official institutions, and like
Mm-hmm.
I really believe in the idea of like academia and science and like
Yeah,
scientific process and all of this stuff. And
true.
I feel like every time this is under attack, which is currently through this discussion it
Often,
is,
probably. Yeah.
yeah, it's really troubling for me, like in all areas. Like we had the same thing with COVID, and with a lot of like it's just, it's a lot of things that are worth criticizing, but just like denying the scientific process is always like something that yeah, kind of is difficult.
Yeah, but that's, I think, also the difficulty with autism, because you
Hmm.
cannot really, like, there's no visible science basically of autism. It's all experience based. And
Hmm.
that's also the case for the diagnosis process.
Hmm.
You are diagnosed based on your experience and other people's experience with you. It's not because of something that you can actually see, like,
I
on
mean,
you, so
yeah,
to say.
it's a soft, I mean, it's still a soft way of
Yeah,
scientifically determining something, but still it is like pretty repeatable. And I mean, you've talked about the process. It was a pretty lengthy process
yeah,
to determine if somebody is autistic or not, and I feel like it should be like it's pretty
definitely. Yeah,
important to do so. uh you are also in Europe, and I
yeah.
guess, do you get any kind of uh I mean, any kind of extra support just from the diagnosis, or
No,
nothing at all?
no. I think I could actually get, like, through yeah, the GGZ, GGZ, I guess it would be called.
What?
It is in, like, in
Yeah.
here in the Netherlands,
Yeah.
but there are huge, like, wait lists in order to get help through that.
Hmm.
And even then, you're not actually guaranteed to, like, get the right help for you, which is not ideal, I guess. So if I would want help, then I would have to pay that from my own pocket. And I
Hmm.
think that's the case in a lot of countries. So
What would be if you could like basically make up some laws right away now? What would be some laws that you would do in order to make life easier and more accessible for autistic people?
Yeah, more accessible help, I guess.
What would be like some, I don't know, make
Maybe
the
in the way of like
metro a little bit
coaching.
less loud and
Yeah, that would be great.
yeah.
um, I think the most like doable thing in this way would be through like making coaching, I guess, almost more accessible in the way of either making it less expensive or having like a budget for people that I could use for that. And I'm sure there are somewhere like ways to get that. I'm just not aware of them probably.
Mhm.
I think that would be the most doable thing because like the world is set up for neurotypicals, which makes sense because it's the biggest part of the population. So it would be really difficult to change the entire system that we set up almost to work for autistic people. Also because we are all so different. Like something that is bothering me might not bother someone else with autism. So I think more personalized like help in that way would probably make the most sense almost.
Mhm. I mean, for example, here in Germany, we have wheelchair accessible like metros, and it's like
Mhm.
completely normal for us to do that. Like
Yeah,
nobody is like bothered by it, or no one is like, why are we spending so much money
yeah,
for making everything wheelchair accessible? No, everyone's like, yeah, of course we do
yeah.
that. Like, what? Why wouldn't we? And even like the train is like every time a person with a wheelchair is coming, like the metro, the person that is driving the metro comes out and then opens like an extra thingy which helps that person to get into
Get
the
on.
metro
Yeah.
with the wheelchair. And it's like no one ever I've never seen anyone like complain for a second or say
Hmm.
anything bad about it, like, or is annoyed that they come too late. No, it's just like normal. And I feel like we could do that in so many areas as well, like for that. uh yeah, although I still feel like it's kind of sad that we have to get a diagnosis to
Yeah.
make that happen, but I
Yeah.
guess it's still necessary to make a difference, to differentiate between somebody just having a bad day and someone really actually suffering.
Yeah.
So um I want to touch on a different topic, that autism and rules.
Yeah.
It
I love them. I love rules.
yeah, I know. Yeah, tell us about the rules that you love.
um, very simple, like example, red lights. I don't cross them at all. Never.
Hmm.
You'll always see me stop in front of a red light, even if there is no traffic anywhere to be seen. Like, just makes sense to my brain. It makes the rules almost a little bit more predictable.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's the case with most rules. Like most of them, there's something logical somewhere in there, which isn't always there, like in the world day to day life.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, it made me like think about rules. Like that's what I that one of the reasons why I find autism so fascinating is because it makes you think about stuff that is so like normal, that is
hmm,
actually not that normal. Like for example, breaking the rules, or like lying and cheating and
yeah,
like scamming the system or something like that is to a certain extent expected of you.
yeah.
Like
And I
you've
really
told
don't see why someone would do it. It
yeah,
does not make any sense for me at all.
you have told that story about you were in a school for I think it was design, right?
Yeah, fashion
And
design. Yeah,
fashion design, and you were working on corsets, is that correct?
yeah, corsets.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
And basically, maybe you can tell the story, so
Yeah.
because the people that watch this don't have heard the
Yeah,
story
so
yet.
in one of the design classes, I have a teacher, and I've always had a fascination with like Victorian fashion, especially corsets. So I really wanted to work with those structures and basically use corsets in that class. And she pretty much straight out told me that I don't want to see a single thing of those corsets anymore in this class. You can do them in your own time. I don't want to see them anymore. So
Hmm.
then at the end of like that semester, basically of the course, I guess, of that class, when we got when we got graded on that, she basically told me like, well, you should have just pushed through. If you wanted to work with corsets, you should have done so. And I'm like, you literally told me that I'm not allowed to do this. How can you then expect me to do exactly what you told me not to do?
Yeah.
That does not make any sense for me at all.
I mean, I guess my first reaction was, of course, to be like, yeah, that's really stupid of that teacher. But
Yeah.
my second reaction was like, actually, that's like going doing what she told you is the thing that you have to do in many situations in life, right? So people are always going to tell you, don't do that, and you
Mm-hmm.
have to still have to do it. And also like lying, like we all agree that lying is not good, but we are being forced in our day-to-day lives to do it like all the time, basically,
Yeah.
like even if it's just a small lie, like how are you, I'm good, like just
I'll
stuff
tell
like
you the
that.
truth. I'll tell you if I'm not doing
Yeah,
well.
that's we've talked about that with Eros. He also like has this problem. He also feels the same way. I think like he also has difficulties just saying, yeah, I'm good. Or he also, like, we don't even notice. I feel like most people
Yeah,
don't even
true.
notice this because I I feel like that's not a question. Like it's not really a question. It's more,
It's just making contact. It's nothing more really for
yeah,
most people.
yeah, yeah. It's like in 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 website websites do this thing where if you log into a server, you basically
Hmm.
send a request to the server when you go onto a website, and it gives a ping to the website, and if the website's there, it gives a pong back, and then they basically make a virtual handshake, and then the whole
Hmm.
process starts. That's what basically that is to me.
Yeah.
But somehow this meta thing that is on top of that is something that you you don't like, or you, I don't know what it
It
is.
doesn't make sense.
It doesn't
Like,
make sense.
why would you ask a question that you don't want to know the answer to? Like, it kind of goes back to taking things really seriously. So not
Yeah.
always getting the meaning that is not literally in the words, I guess. So reading between the lines. That's something that's often a little bit more difficult with autism. You really need to be aware of it from yourself, that you are not always aware of it, basically,
Hmm.
and then try to do so. So it's really involved in order for you to try and get that, I guess. So if you're just living your life, you're not thinking about it. It's just if the words are there, that's what someone wants you to do or wants to know. You react to that. So it's the reading between the lines that's a little bit more difficult, I guess,
Hmm.
and that you actually need to be aware of at that moment in order to react to that in the way that is expected almost.
But what is,
Does
I
that
feel
make
like,
sense?
yes, it does, but I feel like in that situation, the thing that gives you a problem is the lying part,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
that's it, because like intellectually, you know that how are you or how you doing is
Hmm.
just a placeholder for that ping pong, like
Yeah.
basically that first
Basically just
initial
hi.
handshake. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a handshake, and like in other languages it's even more just like, it's, you don't even sometimes answer that question, like it's just
Yeah,
like
true.
just a hello, like. And but I feel like you need this, that's why I think about rules. I feel like it's in the category of rules. You need this rule to tell the truth, like that's why
Well, it's
you.
not even a rule for me. Telling the truth just makes sense because why would you lie about something like that? And even if I would try to lie, I'm really bad at it. I'm really, really bad at lying. So the only way for me to probably actually tell a lie and not have the other person notice right away would be for me to tell something that I actually believe.
I feel
So
like
not telling the entire truth.
you're having, like, even lie and truth you're taking literally, because
Absolutely.
it's not a literal lie, like
No.
saying that
Yeah.
you're good. Like if you tell me how are you doing and I say good, I haven't lied, because you you know that I know that your question was not serious. So me answering you good is not actually a lie, you know? So we're both aware of what's
Mm,
happening. You know what I mean?
okay, yeah, I guess.
So you're not only taking the question how are you literally, you're also
Yeah,
taking
the
lying
answer.
literally. Like you're
Yeah,
taking lying as in
not
saying a
telling the
statement.
truth. A statement that's not true.
Yes. Yes, exactly. But
Yeah.
in that case you take statement as if something that is just a grammar thing that you then compare
Mm-hmm.
to the world,
Yeah.
and you take away the intention of that person. Because in order for it to be a lie, you must understand, you must be, I have to trick you basically. And that's not
But
happening in that case.
if I'm not doing well and then I'm saying good to a question like that, then that
Hmm.
would be lying.
No, because
Like,
my
how would that be not lying?
it would be not lying because it could be lying. It could be lying. For example, it could be lying in a sense where we are really close friends, and I'm sitting
Mm-hmm.
with you, and I come to the table and I say, "Hey Eva, how are you?" Like with that look and being like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like how are you? And then you say, "I'm good, I'm fine. It's all good, no worries." That would be lying,
Yeah, but
right?
to me, that's the same as just asking that, like, from a complete stranger, if you will.
Yeah,
I
but the
wouldn't really
difference
ask it to a complete stranger, but still,
but the difference is that if I ask you how
the
are you
expected
doing,
answer.
yeah, the expected answer.
Yeah,
So
but that's
I
the
don't
reading between the lines that we
exactly,
struggle
yeah.
with.
Yeah, you take, yes, I feel like you don't take into consideration the intention that needs to be there, the intention to trick, which is
Yeah, because
part of lying.
I'm just gonna keep it with me. To me, that doesn't make sense. Why would you have the intention to trick?
No, you
Especially in
don't.
such a
I don't have
normal,
the
like, day-to-day
No,
thing.
you don't have the intention to trick. You don't. You don't. You just
But if
say,
I'm not doing well and I'm saying I'm doing good.
but in that case it's not, that's not the same. Do you see how language, like communication, is not just the words, it's words plus context.
The meaning, yeah,
Yeah, it's the meaning comes from words plus context.
true. Yeah.
And
Which
in
is the
that
exact thing that most autistic people struggle with.
okay, yeah, exactly, that's what I'm talking. Yeah, the
Yeah,
context. So the context is it seeing the context, or is it putting the context and the words together, or both? What do you think?
both, I guess.
Both.
It's pretty well known that most autistic people will mostly focus on the details,
Hmm.
which makes them really good at certain things, like
Yeah.
searching things. For me, I'm known at my job that I'm really good to search things
Hmm.
that are people have no idea where they went. Like I can find them usually.
Hmm.
So we focus on the details, but it can be more difficult to actually piece together almost the complete picture with those details. Because where most people will first kind of see the overview
Hmm.
and then they will focus in on details,
Hmm.
for us, it's built up from the details.
Hmm.
Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you basically look at the details of the sentence,
Yeah,
say stating how are you, and then the answer being good,
yeah,
but you don't look at the whole picture basically. you
yeah. It's
you
just the
you
details, like
you are hyper focused on
on
the,
what they ask, on the
yeah,
literal,
yeah,
like what is asked.
yeah, yeah. uh One, yeah, this can obviously be a really high advantage, of course. It can also be a disadvantage. But are you familiar with Temple Grandin?
I've heard of the name, but I don't really know much more.
She's a really fascinating person. She's autistic, and she has basically, yeah, I don't even want to introduce her because she's done so many things. You can check her out. It's really fascinating person. She has a couple of interviews. Um, Basically, she's in favor of getting a lot of people that are autistic into engineering, because
Hmm.
a lot of autistic people would be very suited to to design complex
Hmm.
machinery and to. But one thing that really bothers me as well is that there is this idea of, if you're autistic and you are struggling, that you also must have, like, there is this idea of, yes, autistic people struggle with X, Y, and Z, but they're really good at X, Y, and Z, at ABC,
Hmm.
right, at something else. And that, I think, is, I'm really bothered by that, because I feel like that's not always true, and that is really cruel for people for who this is not true, because it basically takes, I've heard the sentence a lot, like, I am autistic but not the Rain Man useful type of
Yeah,
autistic. I'm autistic, like, in a sense of, I'm really struggling, and I don't have any superpowers, like, basically.
yeah.
What do you think about this characterization? Do you think we should stop using it, or do you think it has its merits?
Yeah, I think it's mostly harmful to see it in just one way, which is also the reason that I'm kind of hesitant to share that I am autistic to most people, like in the world directly around me. For some reason, that's different on the internet, where basically anyone can hear it, which doesn't make really sense if you think about it. Um, but like in day-to-day life, I'm kind of hesitant to share that I am autistic. It's only if people kind of really get to know me
Hmm.
that they will usually learn that I am autistic, that that's going on, because of the very stereotypical view of it. And that's also why people might actually treat you differently when they learn that you are autistic, because of that stereotypical view, which is not applicable to everyone at all. Yeah.
Do they expect you to have, like, certain superpowers, or do they?
I hope not.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it also depends on what do you call a superpower.
I mean,
Is it
just being
knowing something about a certain like subject? Knowing a lot about that, is that also a superpower? Because most autistic people will have that. Like it's pretty normal to have a very specific interest if you're
Mhm,
autistic. But then again, there's like if we go back to the diagnosis in general, there are different traits that you can score on in order to have autistic. You don't have to have them all.
mhm. I mean, one comparison that I've heard a lot of times is, like, the idea of blindness, like calling it mind blindness. I've, like, to compare it to being blind, and, like, Eros has done this comparison, not in a one-to-one way, of course, but
Hmm.
and also there is a channel called I Am Mind Blind, um, and the idea, like, we have this idea of Ray Charles being blind, and this blindness giving him, like, a superior way of hearing,
Hmm.
just from being blind, and uh, but then there is, like, so many people that are blind that don't have a superior amazing hearing,
Hmm.
and yeah, the image that we have is, like, that they're also good at calculating and stuff like that, which is not even true at all.
I'm
Like,
not good at that at all.
yeah, yeah, I don't think it's a very high characteristic of autism to be good at
No, there are
calculating.
very specific people that are probably really good at it, but
Yeah,
definitely not all autistic people.
yeah.
But again, that's part of that stereotype. And I think in most stereotypes, there is a stereotype for a reason. Like it is seen more often, I guess, which makes it that stereotype, but not everyone is that stereotype. Most people will not be the entire stereotype. It's a lot of traits pushed together to make a stereotype.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean that everyone falls into that. Most likely, most people won't.
I mean, these stereotypes are partly, the reason for it is that there is no good media representation, and,
Yeah.
like, I consider myself a curious person, that, like, yeah, I'm interested in stuff, so I was shocked how little I knew about this topic, and I thought, like, if I don't, like, yeah, in my arrogance I was like, if I don't know about this, like, most people will not know about this, right?
Which is
So,
probably true in this case.
which is probably true. So what do you think is, like, what can we do? Like, is it more portrayal in cinema, in documentaries? What is it? The research? What's the reason for? Where do we have to do the work to get the awareness about this topic? Or do we even need it? Like, probably we do need it, right?
It would be good, but then it would be good with so many different topics. So yeah, where do you start? But I think like better representation in media would probably help. But then you also need the people that actually choose to watch that media or listen to that media.
Hmm.
So
I mean, Rain Man was pretty fascinating for people, right?
yeah,
I mean, my father's generation loved that movie. I think.
hey, I still love it.
Yeah,
Even
I've
if I'm
just
autistic and it's not who I am, I still love it.
I actually want to rewatch it. I've watched it once when I was a child, but I don't
Hmm.
remember it at all. So I've also heard that it's really a bad cliche representation.
Absolutely.
It
Doesn't
is,
make it
right?
less fun.
Yeah. Okay. What about research? What about like the? I mean, it's not really happening a lot in. There are so many scientific podcasts and stuff like that. It's not really that popular of a topic. Why do you think that is?
I have no idea. It probably just depends on what people are interested in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like just like with trends, basically anywhere in
Mm-hmm.
any niche. So yeah, and I'm also not entirely sure how much research like there is done like continually. I
Mm-hmm.
don't really follow it. I like there's a few things that I do follow, but I don't think there's a whole lot coming out all the time. So maybe that also is part of it, like just the volume of research.
Have you heard about the research coming out about autism and the correlation with
No,
with being trans, having gender dysphoria? There
no,
is like a
I've no.
big, yeah. It's like
It does sound interesting though.
yeah. There is so many like really interesting
Yeah,
research going on. It's really hard to get researchers to talk about this. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I have a small channel, but or it is because they don't want to talk have an incel channel talk about that because that could be also one of the reasons. But
maybe.
yeah, I'll definitely still try to talk to someone. Do you have any recommendations?
No, I don't really know any researchers personally, so I'm sorry.
No worries. Yeah, that was all my topics that I wanted to discuss with you. Do you have any questions? Do you have anything else you would like to share with the audience?
I have no idea.
Sure. Okay. Uh, Thank you, Eva, for being here.
You are welcome.
Uh, Feel free to reach out at any time. It was really great conversation. Glad to have you had here. That's
Was
it.
it too difficult?
No, no, it's not. No, it was not difficult at all. I've I, I've asked the same question to Eros. How much of
Mhm.
what we're seeing from you is your mask right now, and
Mm.
how much of it is the real you?
I think a pretty big part of what you're seeing is the real me in this case, which is
And
probably also because it is online, so I don't actually have to make eye contact, so that
yeah,
probably already helps.
hmm but would it be possible to? I mean, demasking is a big topic.
Hmm.
Would it be possible to even see you? Like, would you be even be would that be something you would be ready to do, to just demask for a whole conversation and to just say, okay, because you once said I'm an actor that doesn't get paid, so
Yeah.
would you be ready to demask for a whole conversation and to
I'm
just
not even sure if I could do it. It's
Mhm,
something that's almost so like built into me. I'm so used to doing it. So I'm
mhm.
not even sure if I could do it if I wanted to. Because for the most part, I might just be silent. It probably wouldn't be a very interesting conversation. I love just being silent.
Yeah, that would
So I'm not even
honestly.
sure if you would have the conversation at all.
Would you answer questions more in the sense of yes and no? Probably, right? Because there will be like
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, because I ask many
Would it be
questions.
very interesting? But
The I break a lot of the rules of asking questions, asking open-ended questions. So I ask a lot of questions that could be answered with yes or no. And so I would guess that if like if you take it literally, you might
Mhm.
just say yes or just no and just
Yeah,
let me
I might.
hanging. I don't know. Uh, I don't feel any difficulty talking to you or to Eros. I don't feel like it's more difficult. Actually, I'm not. I was not even expecting it to be more difficult. I was actually expecting it to be more easy because one of the big issues that I have with my guests is that they're some of them are reluctant to answer the question that I
Questions.
ask, and so I would expect from all of that I've read about autism, heard about autism, is that would be something you're pretty good at, and uh, like just
If you have an opinion on it, I think that's mostly it.
yes. I guess the only real difficulty that I have is that if there is something I'm not sure I'm quite understanding, like
Mhm.
this idea of context, words, context, and what exactly it is that is not that what exactly separates our understanding of
Mhm.
certain things is still not making 100% sense for me. And because I'm not sure if it is even possible that it makes sense for me,
I'm not
I
sure
don't
either.
know, I don't know how much I can like question your understanding of it. You know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
it could be that I'm just wasting both of our time and energy to find out something that we can't find out, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's just coming down to knowing that my brain works a little bit different than yours.
Yeah,
I think
so
it's really just that.
with Eros, we had the conversation uh about saying rude stuff to people,
Mhm.
like saying wow, you're really fat, you're really ugly, you're really old, something like that, right? I don't know, do you struggle with that?
Yes and no. I've
Uh-huh.
definitely made some blunders like that
Hmm.
before.
Hmm.
Just because I noticed something, it came out of my mouth before I really thought about it.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, so I guess if someone is thinking that that's rude, then yes.
So for me, I don't understand how, I mean, he's basically saying because it's true it can't be wrong, like
Yeah,
that's the idea behind it. And I feel like you
true.
also have this really high understanding of truth, but and I thought about this conversation afterwards, but what's missing there is if you say something true about something that that person cannot change,
Mhm.
or maybe that person already is changing and you saying the truth, for example fatness, right?
Yeah.
So if I say to someone, wow, you're really fat.
Yeah, I the thing what I would think is like, would it be necessary to say that? Why would you
Yes.
say that? Like, yes, it's true. But is it necessary to point it out? They probably already know it.
Yes. And they might even be, and they probably are on a diet at the moment that we're
Yeah.
talking about,
Or
even
they're
if it's
maybe
not a
they
good.
are taking some medication that is making it that way. Like
Yeah,
you don't know.
yeah, yes. uh so because you've made that, so now it makes sense to you, right, to not call somebody fat.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay. So the situations where you have that difficulty is actually not an intellectual one, it's a slipping, like just.
Yeah. I, for example, I've had this happen with like a, I think it was like with a graduation actually, that one of my classmates, they like we hadn't seen each other in like a few weeks, I guess. So she came back and she had dyed her hair gray. So I was like, oh, "You're gray," and it was just like me. And then the person sitting next to me was like, "What are you saying? You can't just say that." And I was like, "But she wasn't gray before. She was blonde." So like, she's great. just
Hmm.
just noticing it basically, but not really realizing that that might not be okay to say out loud that I was noticing that. So I think that's mostly where it could be difficult for me.
Hmm. So yeah, I really that's the situations where basically that's the only parts where I have difficulties,
Yeah.
because I don't know if, yeah, if I'm onto something, or if I'm, yeah, if it's just a useless endeavor. Yeah, I wonder what the neuroscience says about, like, I would be really curious about the neuroscientific aspects of it, and I don't really want to do the research on my own. I would really like to, like, do it live on the channel,
Mm.
like learn with the audience, like, with the people that are watching, and yeah, I don't know. It's still a big mystery, and it's really hard. It's really hard to get in to talk to people. People are really not that talkative, I feel like.
I think in this case, it's mostly just context. You're
Yeah.
almost missing that a little bit,
Hmm.
which for me is just an observation. She's
Hmm.
great. Like, it's just an observation. It's nothing hurtful or anything. I actually really liked the way that it looked. like, so I think it's mostly just missing that context almost of realizing that the other person might see it in a different way, which is basically where the whole autism thing
But if
comes
she
down to.
has,
Not always noticing that.
but if she has dyed her hair, I think that's all right to say.
Yeah, I think so too. But apparently, not everyone does.
Yeah, it's also really hard in this. It's, I feel like it's the, in that regard, it's the worst time to be autistic, because it's like a really, we live in a society that is pretty sensitive also about,
yeah.
like, the my father's generation was like way harsher, and like my father is not only a generation older than me, he's also from the Middle East, so they're like three generations older than me. So and they were way hard, like they're way harsher in every sense.
Yeah.
Like they don't care a lot about your feelings, like how you think about.
Probably all about the context.
Yeah, yeah, they're basically pretty autistic in many ways, and they just say, like, if it's true, it's true, and then just, yeah. Um. So yeah, I feel like it's a really hard time also to, in that there was this one interview where with Temple Grandin, where also one other issue was pointed out, was that uh, that basically in our current time the social rules that you have to obey are not as
Mhm.
explicit anymore as they used to be. They're really
Yeah.
implicit. You have to figure it out a lot on your own. What used to be explicit. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm still trying to, at the end of every time, at the end of a conversation, I'm trying to find, like, some positive, some nuggets of positivity, and I'm really reaching. It's really difficult. It's because it's not really authentic. But do you want to? Do you have any to spare that you could give?
Positivity?
Yeah, like, do you think, like that's why I asked you before, like, what would you do as a rule to make things easier for people, and I also asked you about media representation,
hmm
like, and basically we're just talking about how bad it it is in a lot of sense, but I don't know, it's fine if you don't.
Yeah, I don't think it's inherently bad, honestly.
Hmm.
I don't necessarily mind being autistic.
Hmm.
Um, like I said, it's just part of me. I wouldn't even know who I would be if I wouldn't be autistic.
Hmm.
I just think the difficulty is often that a lot of people around you just don't understand it. They
Hmm.
don't understand what it is to be autistic, which makes sense because I don't quite understand what it is to be not autistic. So it's really just knowing that of each other, I think, almost. And if we would have that, I think a whole lot of things would be so much easier. Because it would be easier to say no to certain things that people don't understand of you right now if you're saying no, and just choosing what's best for yourself a little bit more. I think it's just if that understanding was there a little bit more, and not even necessarily knowing what it is like to be autistic, just knowing that it's means that I have a different experience. Does that make
There is,
sense?
yeah, that makes sense. I mean, there's this broader topic of neurodiversity, also outside
Mm-hmm.
of autism.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, this whole concept of neurodiversity in and of itself is makes total sense to me. Uh, but just it make doesn't where it stops making sense is that it only works if you're basically being diagnosed.
But it doesn't.
Yeah, it
At least to
doesn't.
me, it doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't. But then it's like I have like when you look at like social media, like you have
Mm-hmm.
many people saying that they have ADHD or like other like and I feel like this huge increase in people that have
Mm-hmm.
something is not really that probable to me. Like it's just like a huge spike in diagnoses. Like it might be that we have missed it in the past, but if also the suffering in and of itself, like the suffering that comes from that, for example with ADHD,
Mm-hmm.
is also spiking a lot. Like it seems like it's not that we diagnose it more, it's just that it actually is more.
I think it actually just comes through more because our society is changing. I think that's more it. Like the entire world that we live in, that is changing. Even if you just think of autism, like the different rules and things from the past might have been difficult. I don't know. I
Mm-hmm.
never lived there. But if you think of, for example, of the stimuli that's come like to a person in a day right now, they are so much more than that would have come to a person in the past,
True.
which means that overstimulation is a bigger problem right now. And it's not that more people are autistic. I think it's mostly just that it's more noticeable because the situation basically has changed. That people are in, which means that it's coming through a little bit more. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's more the case, and I think that's the same for other neurodiversity situations, diagnoses, or
Mm-hmm.
even just self-diagnoses. I think
Can you
that's more
also
it.
imagine that there's some people that just want to like that are actually not autistic that just want to have what we basically talked about, what everyone should have, but only get most people only get when they get diagnosed with something, like this acceptance of just being different and struggling to just
Yeah, I guess.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
probably.
yeah. I I think I mean we have that with I think that makes sense. I mean, to me, it makes sense. Like, if we live in such a like we live in a time that is really unforgiving for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things, and at the same time, you get like complete forgiveness if you are labeled with something.
Yeah.
I mean, it would make sense to me to just uh
To want that,
to want
basically.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
like and also like when you look at communities that being built around it,
Yeah.
and just the fact that you say, ah, you stop being gatekeepy about something, that already suggests that there is something to be gatekept, right? That there
Mm-hmm.
is like a big community with people that are supporting each other and stuff like that, and that just exists if you have ADHD, if you have autism or something else, some other label that you.
Yeah, but I think it's just wanting to be part of a group. It's kind of in human nature. We are group animals, even if we don't necessarily like all of the social contacts
Yeah,
all of the time. Like is often the case in autism, can be kind of draining. We're still group animals. We still need that social contact. We still want to be part of a group, and
true.
whether you are autistic or not, I think that's always going to be the case. So I think if you have difficulty almost fitting into a certain group, that's probably where the real problem then is, and why you might want to fit in a certain diagnosis just to feel like you are part of that group, whether you are really knowing that from yourself or not.
Yeah, and also accept it like the way you
Yeah,
are, and
yeah.
to stop fighting with your brain, as you've beautifully said.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem then is that this false positive is robbing you of agency. I mean,
Yeah.
that is really, I think, a big one. Like it's there is, I think, I mean, there is some stuff that you experience, some experiences that you have that are directly uh related to the way that your brain is, but there is
Mm-hmm.
also other stuff that is not your brain, and it's just maybe it has indirectly to do with autism, but it's not directly the cause of autism,
Mm-hmm.
and you might be able to change it
Yeah.
if you wish to do so, and that just robs you of that agency to have that label. So I don't know. I feel like also I might change my mind, but I think that that's going to be a big like I would like to talk to an expert about that
Mm-hmm.
to see if that's really scientific what I'm saying, or if it's just
I think we know so little
conspiracy.
about it in
Yeah.
general
Hmm.
that it's really hard to really get to the bottom of that.
Hmm.
There is so much more that we really could know, could learn.
Hmm.
Most of the things, like with autism, they are hypotheses. Like they are, it's really hard to prove those things because um, they are not necessarily directly visible.
I don't know if I agree with that with the directly visible part, because it's like most like all of mental diseases are like mental disorders are like that, right?
Yeah, true.
Like.
But often it's the case, like, for example, if you look at the depression, you can scan the brain, you can diagnose it that way, you can use blood work to figure out like hormone disbalances that might cause that
Hmm.
it's not there with autism. With autism, I think the closest that you're going to get to that, like outside of like the person's experience, which is what is used for diagnosis,
Hmm.
is being able to scan their brain while certain things are happening, I guess.
Hmm.
um
Which is a pretty big thing, like in
yeah.
psychology, to be able to even do that is like
Yeah,
pretty big one.
and it's going to be really difficult to use that to diagnose people.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been I've been accused, quote unquote, of being autistic in the in my comments a lot, because of my pedantic way of understanding definitions,
Hmm.
and also I while researching, I asked myself all the time, I'm like this, yeah, this is true, this also fits for me, and I can
But that's
really
the problem if you research anything. If you
yeah,
research anything, there's always a whole lot of things that you're like, oh, maybe
yeah,
I'm that.
yeah.
Oh, I do recognize that. It's always the case.
Yeah, yeah, and at the end it's just like, is there enough of something to be to have the necessity of
Yeah.
finding a box, of creating a box for that,
Hmm.
and to have a label for that.
Yeah. It's all just made up
Yeah,
in the
kind
end.
of.
Like,
And it's not made up also, because
no, yeah.
it's life, it's real, like things are
True.
happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the only reason that it exists is because we decided that it's something. In the end, it's just
Hmm.
a brain that works slightly differently. We're all human.
Hmm.
We just have slightly different traits. It's just labeled autism because we decided that it's a disorder and that there is something different enough to label it. That's
Hmm.
really all it is.
Yeah, I
And
think
I'm not saying
autistic.
there's no problem there.
I think autistic accessibility is a big topic. I think we should talk about that more. Um, yes, that's it. That's all I have.
Yeah.
Ava, would you like to say something?
Thank you for having me. It was interesting to talk like on a live stream. I've never done that before, so it was
That's the
interesting.
first time you've talked on a live stream.
Yeah.
How was it for you? Is it a higher stress situation because it's live compared to your?
Yeah. Because like in my normal videos, like you see maybe 15 minutes,
Hmm.
usually I'll film for like at least 30 minutes to an hour. There
Hmm.
is a lot that I just cut out.
Hmm.
So you don't really have that in a live stream, which
But do
is
you?
more difficult. Also, I haven't planned any of this. Like you were
Hmm.
the one that kind of planned your questions. So
Yes.
it's for me just right in the moment, see what happens. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely a little bit more stressful. It's also interesting to do this,
I mean,
I guess.
it's definitely more difficult. I feel to me it feels more difficult. Actually,
Hmm.
both is difficult. I would not be able to. just speak in front of a camera, and it's really hard as well.
It's
But
really different.
yeah, it's really hard to have a real, genuine, authentic conversation with
Hmm.
someone that you just met, and to keep that uh, to a certain extent in a time. I mean, I have already given up on being entertaining or having like a sensationalist value. Like I know that the topics that we talk about are not, and the way we talk about it is really dry. And
Yeah, but valuable in that way as well.
yeah, that's why I'm doing
Yeah.
it. Like I feel like it's very valuable, but it's really dry also. Um, but what I'm trying to do is to just keep it like concise, in the sense that it's not that, at least the amount of dry knowledge that you get
Hmm.
is concise enough so that you don't get too bored, because I know my
Yeah.
brain goes away if it's not straight to the point enough. And that's definitely something that is dependent a lot on me, because as you've said, I'm planning out this stream, and it's more of a conversation, it's less of an interview,
Yeah.
because I'm also bringing in my own biases and ideas and thoughts. So yeah, it's something that I have to get used to, and I'm training with every conversation, and of course every guest is different. Um, yeah, I hope that I can find more guests, more interesting guests like you on autism, because I don't want to do like random people. I want to pick and choose the person that I think are interesting, and yeah, let's see. That's it.
I think you should try. I think it's called the SP World, the channel.
Hmm.
Have you
SP
tried him?
World? No.
SP World. I think it's called that. Gonna check real quick. Yeah, the SP
Wow, yeah.
World.
But this is really,
I
really a
think
big, big
you should
channel.
try to get them on here. I think that would
I'll
be super
try.
interesting.
I'll try, definitely. I mean, there is super big channels on autism. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
true.
like so amazed like how big these channels are, and like I've never heard like that. It's it's already crazy. I think we're like about the same age, and you're a
Hmm.
bit younger than me. But the thing is, like in back in our childhood, if somebody was famous, everybody knew them, right?
Yeah,
But now people are famous, and you have like you would never
they are
ever.
very niche famous.
Yes, 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 yes. uh I'll definitely check him out. I'll save this as a all right, then let's wrap things up.
Yeah.
Eva, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Feel free to reach out at any time.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.